Hello, everyone. This is Nayiri from Low Carb and Fasting. Now, for those of you who are familiar with this channel, you know that I invite medical professionals, dietitians, nutritionists, scientists, citizen scientists, and inspiring people from the low carbohydrate community to my channel. Now, but we also love success stories right now. Today's guest is a success story herself, but she's taken her mission, her inspiration to a whole new level. You will love her, and she is the Black Carnivore. She's Eda Folks. Welcome to Low Carb and Fasting.
Thanks so much for having me. I'm really excited to be able to have this opportunity to talk with you and your audience.
Well, Eda, I'm sure people are now wondering why the Black Carnivore, what it stands for, what does it represent? But before that, to just a brief introduction to anyone who's not familiar, Eda has a big presence on social media. So we'll talk about that too in a minute. Eda, a brief introduction from you, please.
Sure. So I'm just a regular person that struggled with my weight and health. And most of my life, I struggled with weight. And many of the women in my family also struggled with weight, but I didn't really realize at the time that this was really all connected to metabolic syndrome and the diseases that come with metabolic syndrome. So as I looked for a solution for my own weight trouble and other health issues, I came across doing a low carb diet, and that's something that I've done on and off for years, but never really got fully into it until 2015. And at that point, I ended up losing 80 pounds. I felt so much better than I had felt. And it was really just an incredible transformation for me. So, but that experience really got me curious about like what it was that made this way of eating so impactful for me. But at the same time, I also saw that even though I was better, I wasn't achieving some of the health benefits that I heard other people talking about who were on keto. And so I continued to look and listen for, more ways of healing. And I had heard about the carnivore diet, but it was just something that I thought was crazy. And so finally, but I heard about it over and over again and heard about people having such amazing healing from it that I decided, I needed to investigate. And I ultimately started it expecting to do it for like 3 days. And then on the day two, I felt so much better that I instantly knew that this was going to be like my path forward. I knew I would cheat, I would fall off, I would do other things, I would come back to it, but I knew it was always going to be home base. And over time, I just continued to do it and continued to see more healing and felt like 1,000 times better than I did on keto. And so because of that, though, I felt like I finally had an answer that I had been searching for my whole life. And I knew that other people were putting just as much effort as I did into losing weight and getting healthy, but weren't getting anywhere because they didn't have like the right path. And so I knew I wanted to make this information available to anybody who was interested in it, who might find benefit from it. And so that's why I decided to get started. I actually, while I was carnivore, but hadn't yet sort of come out and said I was eating this way, I started a podcast with a friend of mine called Black Keto, where we were talking about keto and trying to normalize it in the Black community. And then I went on to make my other social media channel, Black Carnivore, and really start talking about the carnivore diet. It started with Instagram, then YouTube, and and I just continued to move forward with it. And one of the things that I decided I wanted to do with the channel was to interview other Black people who were eating this way, and just put it out there, put it up, because I knew I'm interested in the science and the mechanisms by which this stuff works, but a lot of people aren't. And I knew that like understanding why something works is not as powerful for most people as hearing somebody that and trust tell their story of success. That is what is going to encourage people to get on and give it a try. And so I decided, let me just let people come on, tell their testimony, tell their experience, how they did it, what it looks like. and let this be the inspiration. And so at this point, my channel, Black Carnivore, has, well, the largest collection of testimonies of Black people who are doing a carnivore diet. And I specifically wanted to talk about Black people because, well, one, metabolic syndrome, metabolic diseases in general are a massive problem within the Black community, and we seem to have worse outcomes than other populations. So I knew that this was something that was really needed in this community. I have a lot of friends and family that are suffering, and so I really wanted them to see representations of themselves on screen talking about their experiences. I think it's one thing, I think representation matters. It's important to see yourself and to hear your own stories told in your language, whatever. And so that's why I wanted to make sure I had a lot of different types of voices coming from the Black community talking about their experience, and hoping that one of those stories is going to be the one that encourages, other people to move forward. And and to be fair, or to be honest, I've had different people sort of say, why are you only talking about Blackness? What about other people of color? What about people from other ethnic groups? And I think all of us absolutely, need people from these communities talking about how to do low carb, keto, carnivore in these communities. And I don't think representation means me representing everybody who is not white and telling their story. I think representation means everybody, all of these voices at the table. And so I am, eager to help other people from other communities who want to start speaking to those communities and follow a similar pattern as what I've done with Black Carnivore. I am, always there to help people to do that. Mm-hmm. But I think it's not for me to do that for everyone. I think, representation is not one brown face. It is a whole, array of people with different backgrounds, different cultures, everything.
And then you did, I will correct, I'm actually going to give myself the right to correct you. You said you're a regular person. Actually, I wouldn't say regular person. You're a person with a very rich sort of career background. So tell our audience some of the things you've done in the past that actually put you in a position of sort of knowledge and authority and confidence. And these are characteristics of a good, I think, leader or someone we can aspire to be like. So tell us some of the things you've done in the past in your career, because I'm sure they have an impact now on your work, right?
Absolutely. So in my, I guess my first career and first love was anthropology. And I got a master's, and then I was working on my PhD in anthropology, and I studied both archaeology and then cultural anthropology, as well as, I studied, there's multiple disciplines of anthropology, but I also studied evolution and that sort of thing. So it, and I think that is really is about, I've always had an interest in like how, where humans came from, how we evolved, what were the factors, what were we like, what was our culture like, what did we think about or care about in the past, and how does that impact today? And so I think this idea of eating ancestrally and thinking about what is at least best for our bodies, that is informed by my background and my experience in anthropology for sure. And clearly I've always had an interest sort of in science. So it was, I guess my academic training led me to be interested in reading about scientific studies and what the outcomes were and that sort of thing. And then after that, I got interested in politics, and I have worked for many elected officials, and I have always had an interest in social justice since forever. So I was looking for ways to improve the world around me, and I was trying to pursue doing that through politics, which I think is important. I think it's important for everybody to be involved, to and to take their opportunity to to fight for their community. So that's ultimately what I ended up doing. I decided to run for public office myself. I ran for city council twice in Brooklyn. And unfortunately, I didn't win, but it was, really a life-changing experience. And, and again, probably, accounts for my interest and desire to organize groups of people and, move us forward on an agenda or a specific issue. So yeah, ultimately, food and health is that place that I've decided to put that effort, because I see so many, I see so many challenges in the world and so many difficult things. And I feel like for those of us fighting for social justice, a lot of us don't have the energy or like the physical stamina to go out there and march and rally and organize. Like some people, it's all they can do is to go to work, come home, go to bed. So I really wanted to I don't know. I want to help people get out of that and be able to maximize your time on earth and be, who you were meant to be and offer all that you were meant to offer to the world. So that to be able to do that requires you to be in generally good health. And I don't see a lot of my peers and a lot of my family, in good health. So.
Ede, we were talking about representation, and I'd like to talk about that now, talk a little bit more about that. It's so very important. I think people relate more generally to people like them. I mean, that's just the social sort of characteristic of the human race, right? We relate to people who are like us. I noticed that because I spent my childhood in the Middle East. And I noticed that this low carbohydrate or the ketogenic sort of diet is just not reaching the community that I sincerely care about, including my family. I would like them to hear about this, to adopt this lifestyle, but the message wasn't getting through. So I created a Facebook group for low carbers, specifically in the Middle East, and suddenly people could actually see their traditional meals. But the keto versions of their traditional meals, not the rice, but something else maybe to sort of represent or fill in the gap. So do you think your audience love you because you represent them? You're really reaching out specifically to the Black carnivore, although you do have non-Black followers, including myself. I've been following you, sort of supporting you online for a very long time now. So what do you think? But let's talk about more about representation.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's really important. This is, the way we communicate as human beings is to connect with the other person and find some place where you connect and where you have something in common. And that's what like builds trust. And then you kind of move forward from there. And so when you don't see yourself, it's hard you can like look at something and be like, well, that's something people are doing in the world, but I don't know. I don't see anybody like me, so that's not for me. But when you do start to see people like who look like you or who sound like you or who are from a similar place as you, then, you can start to be like, oh, okay, maybe this is something I should listen to. And I think it's especially important when it comes to issues of food. I do hear some like people saying, oh, what's the big deal? Why do you got it? Why do you have to talk about gender, race or ethnicity or anything like that? It's just food. And I, as an anthropologist, I do not believe that. Food is a central way that we communicate our values, our beliefs about who we are, what we stand for. It is a way of communicating where you stand in the family, how much you get to eat, what you get to eat, do you get to choose first? Like there's all of this stuff around food. And it is not just, food, unless you're by yourself and you never engage with other people.
Celebrations revolved around food, and, we show love with food, and our social interaction is based upon food, and food is very culturally or even ethnically, if I may say so, specific, right?
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And so I think you have to, if you are really trying to make some fundamental changes in the way people eat, you kind of have to answer these questions about how you handle foods that are, important culturally, in the diet. And so that has been, I think that was something that was important to happen in the keto space and in the carnivore space. Now, admittedly, people get into this way of eating, they discover all this healing, and they just decide, you know what, I feel amazing this way, and I don't care if I eat differently than everybody else. Or I'm going to, reconsider how I relate to other people. Does it have to be through food? Maybe there can be activities. One thing that I did that was really helpful for me early on was, for family gatherings, Thanksgiving, Christmas, that sort of thing, I would, make all the food, put all the spread out, and then as soon as everybody was done eating, start cleaning off the table, put everything away, wipe down the table, and then pull out a board game and get everyone to play. And that was like a new, sort of thing. But I felt like it sort of put an end to the meal. It stopped the picking that continues to happen where you just keep eating for like 2 hours because you're sitting at the table talking. And, and it creates another way for you to interact with people that doesn't necessarily have, to do with food. And then there's like a nice break between, the meal and dessert. And, if you're going to have dessert, whatever, it helps to have that little break there. So that I think is important to do, like as you start to engage within, a community of like-minded people this way, who eat this way, you kind of get ideas about how to navigate some of these challenges. And, some things can be keto-fied or carnivore-fied, some things can't, and so maybe you have to make some decisions about whether you eat grandma's sweet potato pie or not. Or, is there something else that you can do? So these are all, and there's no set answer. These are all things that every individual has to figure out for themselves each time. But, in community, you get a lot of support to do that.
Now, do you or anyone from your audience find that, okay, in family gatherings, you actually take a low carbohydrate or keto meal to the table and everyone else starts enjoying it and they ask the questions, and then, soon enough, if you've not inspired them enough, at least with that one meal, at least you feel like you've planted the seed. You've just got the idea through to them. Do you find that happening?
I mean, that certainly can happen, but I find like, people just do, you can share information, but people just are not ready to come around until they're ready to come around. So sometimes the best thing that you can do in your family is just be a shining example. And eventually somebody's going to say, you look great. You've lost all this weight and you have so much more energy. And, there's a twinkle in your eye that didn't used to be there. Like, what are you doing? And then that's your opportunity to evangelize. But I find it's hard otherwise. I think that, but I do tell people, one of the things that you can do when you're trying to, when you're dealing with holiday and family gatherings and stuff, is sort of choose a strategy. And I tell people, you could choose that you're going to just stay strict and you're only going to do, eat your thing, but you're going to participate in the social gathering and blah, blah, blah. Or, you can bring things that are okay for you to eat that other people might like, or you can decide I'm just going to pause all the keto, carnivore, whatever I'm doing, and I'm going to eat whatever my traditional thing is, enjoy it, and then get back on track the next day. So, those are all different strategies that that I think are, useful to take, and take an opportunity to teach if people are open to it. But if they're not, let them just be inspired by you.
I'm interested in the carnivore because I'm not very strict carnivore, but ketovore, if I may say so. So I can only tolerate vegetables, every other day in very limited quantities. So it's mainly sort of meat-based diet that I eat. But why do you think the carnivore diet actually works when the keto fails? Why do you think that might be?
Yeah, I think there's two aspects to carnivore that are really important. So for me, it is a ketogenic diet. So when we're talking about keto, that includes carnivore. It is important for me to be in ketosis. That is, healing. It helps like reverse, metabolic syndrome. It helps, prevent metabolic disease like diabetes and high blood pressure and stroke and so on. So I value the carnivore diet for that reason. But then, separate from that, I think that it also removes the foods that are irritating to you. And so, for anybody who has any kind of autoimmune condition, carnivore is incredibly, incredibly powerful at dealing with that, and very, very quickly. So I have a lot of autoimmune stuff going on, more than and even as I continue to learn and talk to other people and can read more, I realize just how much, oops, I keep kicking the table, just how much autoimmune disease has impacted my health. And so, carnivore, just like, I kind of fell into the very best lifestyle for me without, knowing it. So I always encourage people to start carnivore, give it a try, and be super, super strict for just, a couple of days, 5 days, 7 days, and just give yourself a little time to like notice how you feel and see how you feel. And I think I'm surprised at how well or how much improvement I see people having in just a really short time period. So that's, my thinking. And and I guess well, this can be a new concept to some, but if you think about like animals have, if they're being attacked or whatever, they're defending themselves, they have claws, they can scream, they can move, they can fight, they can run, there's a whole list of things that they can do. But plants can't move, right? So their defense system has to be chemical, instead of like movement. And the chemicals are, directed at their main predator, which are insects. And some of these, insecticides or pesticides is what they are, fry their, their nerve system, mess up their brain, or make them infertile, or just kill them outright. And, when we eat these things, I mean, we're obviously bigger than an insect, but it doesn't mean that those compounds don't have an impact on us as well, similar to, whatever they're intended to do for the insect. And so when I understood that, it was like, oh, okay, now I get how plants can be a problem. And I think, some of us just are more sensitive than others. I don't know, I don't know what the reasons are. I do know that as I went keto, I think I healed a lot so that I could tolerate more things that were irritating to me before I had, some eruption that, shows that I'm having too much. So for me, I have asthma, allergies, and eczema. And I also have endometriosis, epilepsy, and lipedema, which are also autoimmune related. So I found that when I went carnivore and took out dairy, it was like 1,000 things came to an end instantly. And so for that reason, I say to people who have autoimmune disease, really just give this a try, because it really can be quite powerful.
Mhm.
Yeah.
I feel that my best as a type 1 diabetic, and type 1 diabetes is an autoimmune disease. And my husband has lupus, another autoimmune disease. So we're very aware that once you have one autoimmune condition, you're sort of vulnerable, you're more prone to developing yet another one and another one and another one over the years. So the carnivore diet is so very healing for us too. So I can relate to that. We feel our best when we're just eating meat. Meat has that healing element. And you see, as a vegetarian of 30 years, for 30 years, I didn't touch meat. So I'm surprised I'm able to say that I only started eating meat last year. But the difference is, I can't even compare the difference in how I feel. I feel so much better. So I wish I knew about the carnivore. Don't you wish that a decade ago?
I mean, and I heard about it in 2000, 2008, I think 2007 or 2008. And I joined this forum where there were people who were doing it. So I knew about it, but I couldn't bring myself to try it because I had, internalized everything that I had learned about what is healthy and how you need to eat the rainbow, and you need 5 to 7 servings of fruits and vegetables every day, and you need to have, all of these things to get your vitamins and your minerals. And I always thought of meat as something that delivers protein, but I didn't think of it as like a substance that contained nutrients itself. It was just a necessary piece, but the real star was vegetables and fruit. And so that, I'm frustrated that I could have started this route, or this path like so much longer ago, and had so much more healing. So yeah, but I'm here now, so that's all I can do, be here now.
So the number of autoimmune conditions you mentioned, so how are they now on what, now that you're on the carnivore diet? You're on strict carnivore, right?
Yeah. So I do have coffee. So the way I kind of talk about it in the Black carnivore community, you can be strict, moderate, or relaxed. So strict would mean you're only eating from the animal kingdom. So it could be dairy, eggs, fish, chicken, beef, pork, lamb, whatever. Then moderate could be where you're eating coffee, herbs and spices, low sugar fruits like olives and avocados. Then relaxed could be you're also including artificial sweeteners. Maybe you have vegetables sometimes if you go out to dinner and like a side comes or whatever, you can eat that. And so all of that to me is in the carnivore field, or in the carnivore circle. You have to match your approach to whatever goal you have. So if you're trying to resolve something serious like cancer, then clearly you need to be very strict. And I'm not saying that this will solve cancer, so just want to be clear about that. But I'm saying if you want to add this to whatever your overall strategy is for dealing with a very serious condition, then you need to be strict. But if you are at your goal weight, or whatever your condition is that you're trying to manage is under good control, maybe you can be more flexible. So it really is up to you, and you have to decide how you want to feel. I find I prefer to feel really well. But other people are, more flexible about it. So for me, dairy, I don't do dairy. Even if you are strict carnivore, some people are sensitive to eggs and to dairy, to butter. So you have to identify for you specifically, like what your things are, what you can and can't have. So for me, no dairy ever. And I feel amazing. But other people, notice that they feel better without dairy. But when they have it, maybe they have some post-nasal drip, maybe they, get a pimple or two, but they're like, I can deal with that so that I can have my morning coffee with the heavy whipping cream and this, this thing and that thing. So, it's up to you to decide, and it's not for me to decide, how well you should feel. So yeah, I do tend to stay pretty strict, and that's where I feel best. But you can do different things, and I think that everyone, who the biological definition of a hyper carnivore is an animal that eats 70% or more of its daily nutrition from animal sources. So by that definition, everyone from clean keto to strict carnivore is in the carnivore family. So you, in fact, you who is watching right now, if this is you, if you have avocado slices occasionally with your scrambled eggs and steak, or if you only occasionally add some of these things, you in fact are a carnivore, even if you're not using that word. So
true, but it's good to have the differences of the different levels, because I think another aspect is very important too. Whichever one people choose to be in, it has to be something that they can sustain, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
They decide, oh, I'm going to just eliminate coffee, and they're going crazy after 6 months, and then they go, oh, this carnivore isn't working for me. Then maybe they just chose the wrong level. Hey, just have the coffee and have your meat at the same time. So it has to be something that you can stick with, but you can also, I guess, shift between, because I do
Mhm.
Some days I'm just very strict, just meat, and then I start introducing dairy, and not because I don't eliminate the dairy because I have a sensitivity to it. I eliminate it because I start putting on weight around my tummy, and that's the only place I put on weight. So I notice it.
But see, I would say that's a sign of sensitivity. I mean, if it's
Yes.
raising your insulin levels enough that you start
Yeah.
putting on weight,
Mm-hmm.
that would suggest that it's an irritant to you. Your body doesn't like it. I
Right.
mean, but like I said, the problems with it can be from mild to very severe. So for me, it's very severe. I can't breathe. I could die.
Mm.
But for someone else, maybe you put on 5 extra pounds, but maybe you decide you don't care. Like, just get a slightly larger skirt and you're fine with it, or it doesn't show. So it really is up to you to decide. But you do have to, I think that you should really pay attention to what your body is saying. And I think that our bodies speak to us all the time. This is, pain, pleasure, getting the idea about something. These are all ways that your body kind of communicates with you. So just listen. Like, it doesn't take a PhD. It doesn't take, an amazing level of knowledge. It just, if you listen, like you're your own best expert.
Eda, you do talk in some of your podcasts. You have mentioned sort of the discrimination element with respect to the Black community. So let's talk about that and why that makes your mission, what you are trying to do out there, even more important.
Yeah, so more recently, I've really started talking about this, but I started looking at a lot of different research and realized that there is a really strong connection between stress and metabolic syndrome, and I think that may be the missing link between to explain why the Black community has more more challenges with metabolic disease. So, there are studies that show that Black people who have diabetes have worse outcomes and tend to have more amputations, even when, in comparison to their white counterparts, even when you control for things like access to health insurance, resources, finances, so on. So there is something else going on that's not related to money and to access to medical care. And so I think that connection is the additional impact of the stress of living in in a country that is beset by systemic racism that actively works against Black people. That is that key. And there was a study in 2018 that was looking at the role of or the impact of everyday racism on women, and they looked at a lot of different ethnic groups and found that there was a 33% greater likelihood that a middle-aged Black woman would have metabolic syndrome than other populations. Like there was really that high connection between the experience of racism. And so all my life, I have been told that I was going to have diabetes, high blood pressure, obesity, or as we call it in the Black community, sugar. I was going to have those things because I was Black. And, even in the medical literature, they talk about Blackness as a risk factor for, kidney disease, for diabetes, for, various types of metabolic disease. And I think that, it is true, but not for the reasons that we're told. I don't think that there's, a genetic thing to do with Blackness that leads us to this condition. I think that it is the experience of being Black in this country and experiencing racism, big and small, and all of these, all of that is what adds that extra layer of stress, which drives those metabolic diseases and makes them worse. So it's not to say, we definitely need to change the way we eat, but there is this other layer that's adding to the disease. And so that is what I really want to speak to. And I want people in the Black community to understand that, and anybody else who's, willing to listen and participate, that, I think that racism is a public health issue. And it is an important part of really trying to mitigate the expression of this disease in my population, in the Black population. And I know that that's an issue in other populations as well. And that's why I want to support other leaders from various communities to rise up and to speak about this, and spread this message as far as possible.
You see, that stress element is fascinating for me, because I wear, as a type 1 diabetic, I wear a CGM. And I know the impact, the direct impact of stress, even when I've eaten the same foods, but one morning I've woken up with stress, or I haven't slept well at night, and that's added stress. I wake up with higher blood sugars. I can see that right away in my blood sugar graph. So, but it's fascinating to think about, the stress and the impact of that is undergoing stress, and it's constant. It's not like it's going away and it comes back one day. It's constant. It's hidden. You can't see it, but it's constantly there. And the impact of it on a larger population. That to me is completely fascinating.
Absolutely. And I think that, when I say this to someone, people get it, immediately. And I think that my message is, it relates to, anyone who has experienced sexism and, the challenges for women in the workplace, and, anybody who is struggling to, achieve parity and equity. This message is relevant. So I think that, even though I talk specifically about the Black community, I think that this information is relevant to anybody. And I think that that is probably why I do have a very diverse audience. It is not, it isn't just people, Black people, but it's all people, because the information, is there, and the science is there, because I'm interested in those things. But I'm also, trying to help people to understand what the rest of their life has to do, and diet has to do, with their health. And I think in the wellness space, I guess people who are into yoga or meditating, lots of people are trying to touch on all of these different things. But I haven't heard anybody, I don't know, bring it together in the way that I have, in a way that has been helpful for me. And I hope that, that I can, continue to bring this message, and that other people who haven't quite resonated with some of the other voices in the wellness community can find here the healing that they're looking for. I do think, the meditation, dealing with stress, building strong communities and support networks and friendships and family, all of those things are really important. And that is, how you're going to be able to handle the, the things that you face. I am not going to be able to eradicate racism. It's not, even my problem. I'm not the one driving it. I can't do that. But it still is my problem, and I still have to deal with it. So I'm still, like the rest of you, all trying to figure out, how do I deal with that? How do I maintain my own health at the same time as I'm, navigating the world and dealing with all of these things.
Mm-hmm. I'm sure everyone relates to stress in one way or another, because, the personal stresses we all live with, with our stress, with our work or personal life, family matters. But stress due to discrimination, that's something much wider, much bigger, and a much harder battle to fight. So well done to you for all your efforts, as you said, but you can't fight it all. You can't shift the world in a year or two, but I think you've started that ripple effect. So, and I absolutely love you for it. Well done. You have all my support. Why don't you share some of your success stories from your people? Because we all love success stories. So whether it's from the Black community or any other community, we all love success stories. People who've completely changed their life through diet. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And I definitely encourage people, you can check me out on YouTube. Black Carnivore is the name of my channel. And I've tried to create some playlists covering specific kinds of conditions so that, you know, if you have autoimmune or sugar addiction or diabetes or high blood pressure, you know, you can hear other people's stories. But, you know, just about every story that I post, you know, people are healing from, you know, many things. But probably, I would say, probably the most dramatic thing that I saw was I interviewed a woman who went through one of my 21-day challenges. And she started with high blood pressure. She had been, her blood pressure had been high for about a year. And she had decided she didn't want to get on medication. So she wanted to try lifestyle choices. And so her doctor gave her a year to do it. And so over the course of that year, she tried a whole bunch of things. And you know, even like you know, diet, no salt, exercising more, losing weight any way you can. She drank celery juice because that's a thing now. I don't know if you're familiar with that on the internet, but drinking raw celery juice. She did all of these things and found that her blood pressure was higher at the end of the year. And so she, you know, somehow came across or heard about carnivore and decided to give it a try. So she went on the challenge. And by the end of the first week, she was getting normal blood pressure readings, normal in a week. So she kept going. And by the end of the 3 weeks, her blood pressure was normal all the time, all the time. So, you know, to me, that is stunning, just absolutely stunning. And, you know, people, and then somebody else that I interviewed, his name was Chuck. He had been on high blood pressure medications for 10 years and he had been vegetarian, vegan. He had done all sorts of things to try to control, you know, his weight and his health. And none of those things had worked. He went carnivore for 6 weeks, was totally off his blood pressure. And now his blood pressure readings are normal without medication. So I think, you know, think about how much money he spent, how much drugs he was consuming and having whatever effect on the rest of his body. I think about all of the impacts that it has. Being sick is expensive, and you know, and there's a lot of aspects to it. I know, you know, a lot of people talk about carnivore, or they're concerned that meat is expensive. And, you know, yes, meat is not the cheapest thing, but it is also the most nutrient dense thing. And I say to people, you know, I can eat 2 pounds of ground beef in a day and be fully and completely satisfied and totally well. But I cannot eat 2 pounds of broccoli and say the same. So, you know, you may spend more, but you end up spending less because you're not having all the snacks, you're not having all the stuff. And when you buy broccoli, you know, I don't know about you, but I get it, you know, I spend $3.89 a pound. Then I go home, I cut off the stem, throw that away. So that's like half the money I paid for. I just throw it away. And then of course, you know, you're eating the top of it. So it's wasteful. It's more expensive, I think, to eat non-carnivore. And then you get off all of these medications. So when I was before I went carnivore and I was still eating dairy and vegetables, you know, I was on Benadryl around the clock. I was on Flonase, which I didn't know was a steroid, and you know, for several years of using it, you know, I took Sudafed regularly, Claritin, and then my asthma was totally out of control. So using Advair or Singulair and an emergency, you know, the albuterol, the emergency inhaler. So plus all the tissues I was buying and Mucinex, you know, so I was like constantly spending money on things. So I think about, you know, I took all of that out. When I took out dairy, all of that just went away instantly, you know. So when I hear people, you know, being concerned about the cost, I do try to remind them there are other reductions in costs that you're not even thinking about right now. And getting off of prescription medications is, you know, can be a major reduction in cost for people. So you know, so I do encourage them to check out you know, these stories and these interviews and learn how people have really dramatically changed their lives, you know, by eating differently. One of the other women that I talked to I think she said she's a nurse practitioner. And so she's in the medical field. She, you know, counseled people on diabetes and found when she finally went to the doctor, because I don't know, I think this is common. A lot of medical people don't want to go to doctors, or they treat themselves. And so when she ultimately, started having a lot of conditions and issues going on and got tested, learned her A1C was 12, which is very high. And so she was quite embarrassed that, here she is, this medical professional teaching other people what they should do to manage their diabetes, and how she's got uncontrolled diabetes. So she started on carnivore, and like in months, brought her, in a very short time, brought her A1C down to, I think, like 7. And she's continuing on. So I'm sure she's going to get there. But those are things that can really turn around quite quickly. And so I mostly talk about like the metabolic disease, because those are the things that are, really prevalent in the Black community. But I want to talk more also about autoimmune disease, because that is something that's a problem in the Black community, but I don't think people talk about it. We don't necessarily understand, or we don't get good medical professionals who help us diagnose, and figure out some of these conditions and things that are going on. But carnivore has been life-changing for them. I did another interview with a woman named Elizabeth, who had fibromyalgia, well, eventually was diagnosed with fibromyalgia, but she had like so much pain. She ultimately had to go on disability and stop working, and struggled with this stuff for like 20 years. Finally learned about eating more meat and more animal fat, and eventually, got into carnivore, and all that pain is gone. And but 20 years of her life was spent, she took a lot of pain medication, and fentanyl even. And so, and then it took years to get off of that, and to get through the side effects, or the outcome of using really strong drugs like that. So, she's now sort of being able to be her full self again. But I think, man, that's 20 years of your life that you were not working, you were not doing anything, you were consuming all of these medications, and you were in, all this pain, and couldn't be, your fullest self, because you didn't have the right information about what to eat. Like that's just awful. So her story was really really moving as well. And now, she is able to be more active, and to have more, more of full life.
Lots of inspiring stories. I mean, I can add mine to it too, how much I reduced my insulin intake as a type 1 diabetic. So, and how much my arthritic pains go away when I'm eating only meat. But I'm happy you mentioned the cost element of it, because we hear that a lot, don't we? I think that's one of the first things. Well, because I do coaching as well as you. So that's one of the first things. So how do you afford the cost? I mean, meat is expensive, right? But it doesn't have to be. It really doesn't have to be. I mean, I'm in California right now. I'm interviewing from California at my local store. I don't want to name the store, but there's always something on offer. It's either the steak or the ground beef or the bacon. And if you're not very picky, then you can eat well on a carnivore diet. Also, given the fact that you're not eating 6 meals a day, you're not having 6 meals, it's satiating. You're probably eating only 1 or 2 meals, and that's it. So it doesn't, I think if we add up the cost, it really does not have to be expensive. So did you tell the people that you counsel or you coach that just to get the meat that they can afford?
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And people always ask me, like, do I need to eat grass-fed meat, or it's too expensive to eat grass-fed meat? And I think, don't worry about all that. Just get the best quality meat you have access to and you can afford, and then don't worry about it anymore. And if you do have access to grass-fed meat and you want to try it, try it. I can't say that I've really noticed a benefit for myself. So I don't know. I don't think that that's a requirement. That being said, I think you want to get the best quality, fresh meat that you can. When I try to have more processed meats, I tend not to feel as well. So things like, hot dogs, sausages, deli meats, things that are already processed, I don't know, pork rinds, things like that. Those have a place and you can have them in carnivore, but I don't make them the base of, a lot of meals. So they are like a flavorful add-on to other, to fresh beef or, lamb or whatever it is I'm going to have. So that's what I tell people to, to do, but don't get too dogmatic about it. You have a lot of meals to eat before you die. Hopefully, you have a long life ahead of you. And there's there's endless choices out there, so you're just gonna have to just take it day by day and see how you feel. And if you really like how you feel, I do encourage people, because sometimes people are like, oh my god, never have like fruit again, never have something sweet, never have sugar. And it's kind of like, well, yeah, okay, like I can see why you mourn the donut, but think about how you get to have delicious ribeye, you get to have, bacon and eggs, you get to feel good every day, you get to not feel hungry all the time, you get to not have to count calories. Like there's all sorts of benefits that you get too. So it's not, it's not all bad news. But if you're addicted to sugar, I get why, it's kind of like, oh my God, I can't do this. But yes, you can. You can. And you'll be amazed at how much better things are when you do.
Now, one of the biggest benefits is is that you control your hunger. Hunger levels just literally go down. It's like a switch. The hunger goes down and people don't feel hungry all day long. And that's such a liberating feeling, isn't it? Not to think about where your next food is coming from, right?
Oh yeah, totally. But I don't think, even when I was a kid, like this, it was sort of being introduced, this idea of eating more and more. Like at some point, we were told that you needed to eat more to keep your metabolism up. Bodybuilders need to eat more often so they can build more muscle. And so for many people who are younger than me, like it's the idea that you should be able to go long periods without eating. It's like, no, that's not right. So I think we have all been done a disservice. But when I was a kid, my grandmother, when dinner was done and she finished the last dish and hung the, the dish rag over the faucet, that was it. The kitchen was closed. You did not eat anymore until the kitchen opened at breakfast and there was no more eating. And I think that's, that was normal. Thinking about all of human, all of human history, like it takes a lot of time and effort to keep food good and not spoiling and to prepare it and eat it and all of that. So like, nobody would have been doing that. It's too much work to be like constantly eating. So it is really liberating. And I think this is why a lot of people jump right into doing OMAD when they start carnivore or even keto, because it's like, oh my God, I can go all day and not think about food and only have to like wash dishes once and think about food, or I don't have to carry food with me. Yeah, that is super liberating.
How do you how do you approach fasting? I mean, our channel is called Low Carb and Fasting. So most of my audience either do one or the other or both. How do you find any of any carnivores from the Black community who are doing well? I mean, not just intermittent fasting, because of course they will be doing that if they're just having one meal a day, but just longer fasts. Say, I don't know, 36-hour, 42-hour fasts or 3-day.
Yeah. I mean, as many different types of people as there are following carnivore, there's as many different types of, fasting protocols that people follow. So yeah, fasting and carnivore go hand in hand. They're very powerful tools together. One doesn't replace the other. They do great together. That being said, I haven't enjoyed fasting and I've done some of it, but I haven't done as much of it as other people in the Black carnivore space have. But that being said, I do recognize its value and I'm trying to incorporate more for me again now. Because I realize I have so much autoimmune stuff going on, I decided to try to do a 90-day gut reset for myself. So I'm not leading this globally, but just, for myself. And I'm trying to, one, eat very strict carnivore, two, do some fasting and more extended fast, three, get my sleep, which, is always a challenge. 4, exercise more. So I started taking roller skating, and I joined the Y, and I've been, lifting weights. And then I'm also I started taking some probiotics. So, hopefully that will help. And I feel like there was, and stress management. So meditating, and doing, other sort of spiritual practices to help with that. So, we'll see whether I see, some improvement. When I went carnivore and stopped eating dairy, my asthma and allergies like completely stopped. Like that was just so much better. Eczema is, still continues to be an issue. It's not as much as it once was, but it's still an issue, which would suggest to me that I still have some gut dysbiosis, even after all these years. I've certainly eaten things like, my dog's like, now I want to play. I've, eaten artificial sweeteners, alcohol, which is not a health product, and I don't recommend, consuming a lot of it, and things like that, which I think, and then stress, also, all of these things dysregulate the gut. So I think, food is a really important thing, but that's why these other aspects of life are really important too, because those impact your, your insulin, and your gut, separate and apart from the food that you actually put in your mouth. So that is why I'm trying to put all of these pieces together and see what that does. And then the endometriosis, I'm now, I guess, at the tail end of menopause. So, I'm sort of through that, but like, it doesn't mean that whatever the dysbiosis was that led to that problem in the first place is resolved. It just means that that life cycle, has ended. So its expression is now going to be different. So I don't know. Epilepsy, I just started, looking at the connection with the gut. It seems pretty clear that it is, it stems from gut dysbiosis. I don't know what is required to have a healthy gut. What is required to overcome epilepsy? Like, I don't know, And then lipedema is, I am just learning more about it now. So that is also something that I'm just starting to understand, what that means in my body, and so on. So I think that what is exciting about this for me personally is, there's this constant sense of experimenting and observing, so I'm observing what happens in my body when I try these things, and that's interesting. I don't know, maybe that's the scientist part of me, but it's interesting to me, and so that's why I continue to look at it, and I'm seeing more and more people who are doing similar things and finding a lot of success. So yeah, there are people who do 5-day fast, 3-day fast, stuff like that. Right now I have been doing like a 24-hour fast, and I want to try 48 hours. So my next meal is supposed to be on Sunday. We'll see how that goes, but yeah. And also, I should say that I'm also getting off of my epilepsy medication in conjunction with my neurologist. I had some testing done earlier this year that suggested it would be okay to do. So I've been working on that. So that's sort of making me a little bit nervous, because obviously it's a very big deal to get off medication. So I have also, decided to push more into the fasting, because I really want to try to keep my ketones as high as possible for the brain. So I can only get so high when I eat, on a day-to-day basis, my ketone levels are just not that high. So I have to fast to get really, much higher levels.
And that's one reason I fast, not because I have to, I want to lose weight. I fast, I do the longer fast, not regularly, to regain, but I do them to regain insulin sensitivity. Insulin literally goes down. I mean, one advantage, if there ever is an advantage to a disease, this is the only advantage to type 1 diabetes, that you can actually see exactly how much insulin you're putting into your body. But if your body is producing it, you can't see how much insulin your pancreas is pumping out. I have to take it exogenously, of course. So I see the insulin sort of dose going down literally from the second day of fasting. So,
Mhm.
and that has a healing effect. It literally
Mhm.
does. And my gut issues completely disappear after
Mhm.
the second day of fasting. So let me know how your fast goes. Before I say goodbye, can you let the audience know how they can reach you?
Yeah, absolutely. So you can always follow me on YouTube at Black Carnivore. I'm also on Instagram at Black Carnivore. And I've also started an online community called the Black Carnivore. It is the Black Carnivore community, and you can find out more about that at blackcarnivore.com. I think that community is so important in terms of following this lifestyle, because we are doing something that goes totally against what every person of authority has told you
Yeah.
about health for your life. So you really need to have community to support you through that. And I think this is emerging science. Any changes about how our country or our medical institution, any changes they have about what foods are considered okay or not, is going to come. I mean, it's going to come from the ground up. It's not going to come top down. So that means that all of us have to educate ourselves. We have to lift up ourselves. We have to change our health. And once we do, that a message gets out there. Other people, we're not living in vacuums. Other people will see you. Other people will see how amazing you feel and you look, and they will want some of that. And the best way to support people in that process and to support them to get to their goals is being in community. So I do encourage you to come and join. And we are open to all races, ethnic groups, everybody. You just need to be a cool person, be curious about your health, about your body, and willing to give carnivore a try, and to be supportive of other people and share your experiences. And that's it. So I encourage you, if you are looking for a carnivore home, a place that you can go to get that encouragement and support, head over to Black Carnivore and check that out. And that's about it. That's where you can find me.
Well, with that positive message, we're going to conclude this discussion. Thank you so much, Eda, for accepting my invitation. It was amazing having you here, and my audience will love you. Thank you very much.
Thank you for having me. I really had a great time talking today.